Hi, everybody. Welcome to Culture Talks, where we talk to next-gen leaders who are working to make the workplace and organization culture better. And today, I'm so delighted to have Taarif, and he likes to also go by Tim Jafferi, who's the Chief Business Officer of Happily.ia, one of my favorite companies. They're out of Bangkok, and I know you can go online and find out a lot about them and about Tim, but tell us where your feet are planted on the ground right now at this moment.
Hi, everybody. Thank you again for having me, Lauren. I'm based here in Bangkok. We used to be in the same time zone for about a decade, but about 2 years ago, I moved back to Thailand, where I'm from, where my family is based, to work on Happily.ai. And as you said, our mission here as well is very much centered around creating happier, healthier workplaces. And I've long admired your work, Lauren, and thank you again for having me today.
Thanks, Taarif. And it's incredible when you look at your organization, and I'm going to come back to that in a little bit. But you guys have about 300 plus clients, including people like Starbucks, Thailand. And you're really digging into the world of advancing organization cultures. I'm just curious, right? All those years that you were in Mountain View, Taarif was the chief of staff at Google Search for a decade or so. Unbelievable high impact job, and obviously massively successful. But you're getting up in Mountain View, and then one day you're getting up in Bangkok. Just talk a little bit about that transition. What's that like?
I'll say that was probably one of the harder transitions I've made in my life. I think going from Kearney to business school to Google and the few different roles that I had was relatively smoother. When I went from chief of staff at Google Search to back here in Thailand on Happily.ai, I went from being an organization of about 200,000 people to being a part of a lean team of 15 to 20. Culture-wise, we're worlds apart. I think at Google, I was definitely lucky to be working among the brightest people who are very ambitious, very work-oriented. In Thailand, people are a lot more ambitious about life and friends and kind of life outside of work. So it's a very different feel. But also, I guess in terms of the core responsibilities that I was working on, what I'm working on now is also very different than what I was doing before. So there's a lot of transitions at once, but I like change, I like growth, so try to embrace it the best as I could.
So interesting to go back to a country where there's more of maybe this balance between life and work and how it integrates. And I'm curious about that.
Yeah, there's been a lot of data to say that, I think before attrition was higher, people cared a lot about the mission and the work that they're doing. But now we're seeing more data and research that says that people are very happy and content just, kind of chilling at their jobs and like kind of hugging their jobs rather than finding other workplaces or really trying to focus harder on what they're at.
And do you think that's got the uncertainty's got a lot to do with that, Taarif? That is just anxiousness about, the world seems to be shifting around, and maybe it's just don't move, kind of hug your job, stay where you are, kind of a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's a lot harder now to find a new job.
Yeah.
With layoffs that are happening, I think more and more people need to interview, 20, 30 times just to find a role. When you hear about that, it makes you think twice before you leave.
Yeah, so hence this kind of like clinging. By the way, let's just do a little bit of a detour for a second about your brother. He's the founder of Happily.ia, and like you say, was the author behind and does a lot of the research. And just talk a little bit about him and his vision and the purpose and how it really attracted you to be part of that purpose. And we'll come back to some of these trends.
Yeah. So Taarif, his nickname is Reef. He's my twin brother. He's older by 11 minutes. He's been my role model for all of my life, and we've always wanted to work together. So coming back to have an opportunity to work with him has been a dream come true. He has been an entrepreneur for about 15 years. Happily.ai is something he founded back in 2017 with that mission of creating happier workplaces. So I've definitely learned a lot about behavioral science, building products that scale and really kind of having like a systems dynamic point of view in terms of how do all the different things that we do, the levers, the systems that we have, all interact to create something, create the type of impact that we've been able to create for our clients.
I love it. What a great story. You might have, and you may not be exactly familiar, but I think just maybe we could just explore together. Revenge quitting. What's your take on revenge quitting?
I think with revenge quitting, we're starting to see well-being and relationships take a hit at work. And when you don't have that same level of connection, of belonging, of respect, then you're going to get more of these, more toxic workplaces, but also more workplaces where you don't care as much about the actions that you take, and people are being less conscientious than before. People are being, slightly less respectful than before. And I think these are some of the byproducts of that.
Yeah, but it's this evolution of this almost new kind of language and angles around how people are feeling about the workplace. And if you step back and you've seen some of the results, right, Tim, around whether it's McKinsey or Deloitte, or you name it, the employee engagement and leadership engagement is actually dropping, if we can believe it. What's your take on that? Excuse me.
The other related take that I found quite interesting is that nowadays more people are turning down promotions. Like I feel, for like our generation, you would grab at that with both hands. It's something that you would love to do. Nowadays, people don't want additional responsibility and the stress that comes with it, right? It's not worth the small increment in pay. They'd rather just reject that promotion offer and continue to do their current role, which is, I think, a very new and interesting dynamic.
Yeah, it is. It is. So when you stem back from this, you kind of want to ask the question, what the heck is going on? Do you think top leadership really gives a damn about culture anymore? Or do you think is it almost trendy not to? Or what's your take? What are you observing as you're going out there and you're talking to all these clients that, frankly, you're introducing Happily to, and you're getting some people that are saying yes and people are saying no? And why do you think they're saying no to getting involved? And why do you think they're saying yes?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. It's one of the other kind of culture shock pieces I've had from working in the U.S. for a long time to coming back to this part of the world. I'll say that in Thailand and in many parts of Southeast Asia, leaders are not as people first or people centric. It's really about performance and productivity first. If people are happy, great, but that's not something that they care about. I think there's other more Western or more mature markets where there is a higher number of leaders who genuinely care about their organization, their employees, their team members. They want them to grow. They want them to be happy. But that's something that, I guess in this part of the world where more of our clients are, there's this education that's required to say hey, actually they go hand in hand. If you care about your people, you will also get better productivity, better loyalty, and better performance.
So do you think in North America that leaders are starting to trend the other way, to go back towards the dichotomy of choosing accountability / efficiency over sort of engagement?
Yeah, without getting too political, I think there definitely has been a reverse in trends. Even my experience at Google, I would say when I started in 2014 to my last few years there's definitely been a shift away from people first to profit first.
Yeah.
It is evident, but again, I still think that if more leaders had a long-term view of kind of business growth, those two things don't conflict with each other.
That's exactly right. They don't. They're an and. One of the things that struck me about the work you've done is that you guys pay attention to employee net promoter score and what happens, right? And so I think I saw a slide where you guys had done some assessment that employee net promoter scores are often negative, right? So there are more detractors than there are promoters working somewhere, right? So it's a negative employee net promoter score.
Right.
The best organizations with the highest, EBITDA performance, or they often have a high or a higher employee net promoter score. So the evidence is there. There's so much evidence that they go hand in hand. But you guys have been managed to take that employee net promoter score and push it way up and further to the right. What What have you done that's really caused that to happen, Tim?
Yeah, so you're right. We work with, a few hundred clients, 300 plus clients at this point, and the average is around -10. We're really proud of the fact that on average, we're able to pull up the NPS by plus 48 points in just a matter of 1 to 2 quarters. And to your
That's
question,
incredible.
honestly, the main factor that drove this wasn't around, new perks or salary increases or anything like that. It was really just a very basic thing of creating a more a culture of continuous feedback, of recognition, of connection, of just taking the time to have meaningful conversations and understand each other better. Those things go such a long way in shaping how people really feel about the workplace. So we credit just enabling and triggering far more meaningful and regular conversations to take place.
So I had a meeting with top executive just the other day. We were having lunch together, and this particular person was talking about taking on perhaps the CEO role and maybe doing a listening tour. And so I encouraged him to think about a digital listening tour. I think there's some merit in going out and, like, let's say you've got thousands of employees and going out there and putting yourself out there to listen in some way, but it's a very hard thing to scale. Whereas happily, what you guys have managed to do is you provided a digital platform for people to do constant listening, like daily, like you're doing. So I don't think leaders definitely, I don't want to conflate the two. You want to make yourself available and accessible and be out there at a personal level. But if you really want to know what's going on in your organization, you need to know it almost daily. You need to know it using modern platforms. The old flip chart, visit the branch kind of thing is useful, but not scalable. And it's just too slow. And I want to get your reaction to that, because you guys have become great by doing bread and butter things.
Right.
It's incredible, like what you've managed to do by putting a platform. Because if I use your platform and I find out what the hell's going on in my workplace, wherever it is, however I put, I ring fence it daily. So talk a little bit more how you guys have managed to do that.
When we talk to leaders a lot about their aspirations, the common things that we hear about is that they want their organizations to be more responsive, to be more agile, to be more adaptive. But the irony is that the process and systems that they have in place don't support that. Most companies still rely on an annual engagement survey. Some leaders, like you say, make the extra effort to have listening tours. But if you have data points once a year, that's not going to actually help you. That's not going to, yeah. So what we recommend and what we support our clients with is actually being able to have a very regular pulse of what's going on, so that if there is a problem, you don't wait a year to find out. You wait a few hours to find out, you take action right away, and then you're able to actually measure and understand, did the action that you take have the impact that it was intended, or is there something else that you still need to do? So
I've been, as you know, a CEO of a couple companies and chief people officer of a large financial institution. And when I saw Happily.ai's platform, and I want to make sure this podcast is not a advertisement for Happily. I mean, I love Happily and what you're doing. It is a massive consideration, though, and reinforcement of the idea of rapidly finding out what's going on daily and taking action to make things better, but also to acknowledge and to use the recognition platform in an integrated way with the listening platform. That's a very powerful thing that you guys do, and you combine that very. So, I mean, it would take me a nanosecond to apply this platform in my organization if I were, back in that world immediately. So, why the resistance?
Yeah, I wish I had a better answer for you, but what we've learned is that what it takes is hard work. It's the actions that you do every day, right? It's not as big, as splashy as, honestly, Lorne, our biggest competitor is like annual sports days and these large, kind of splashy events. They might look fun, they might be great for PR, you might get a lot of really great pictures from it, but the thing is, it's not going to drive sustained or continuous impact. The things that are hard are sometimes the most meaningful, and this is something that, it takes a little bit of effort every day. Having regular conversations with your team, asking the right questions, understanding what the challenges are. It's basic, but it sometimes is not as cool.
I've done all the research over all the years, and I've looked at just tons of engagement surveys, and for a while I was stumped by the fact that people would say um, that typically the engagement question was something about, I want the tools to be able to do my job well. And I often used to take that more literally. And what I came to appreciate over time is that people are talking about the negative friction of any of the processes and systems that get in the way of them to be able to create good experience and value for other human beings.
Right.
That completely overwhelms, all the other stuff that we do around the periphery, including often throwing compensation at things. People they want to be able to do a great job, and they want to have leaders that can take the negative friction out of the way. And that's what you guys help do. But it takes hard work. It's a lot easier to just throw an API and quote hold people accountable and fire their behinds if they're not doing it. It takes a lot harder work to listen and to really, and I completely agree with you. It's harder.
Yeah, I think it comes down to if they genuinely care about the folks that they're leading, they would crave for something like this, right? They would want to use a tool or a platform to allow them to better understand what's the mindset, what are the questions, what are the challenges that some of their team members are going through and how they can help. I think the challenge, Lauren, is that we hear a lot of leaders would prefer to just do a one-way communication of like, these are our goals, this is a strategy, now go get it done. They don't want to
Exactly.
take time to actually have a back and forth conversation.
Yeah. So walk me through when you see it starting to work well. So give me an example, because I think I'd like to inspire people that are going to listen to this podcast to explore Happily or other platforms like this. What would be an example of how it would work?
Yeah, well, I'd love to showcase one of the customers that we have. Without naming the name, they're a large global company with a large operations in Thailand specifically. We're working with one of the leaders in that organization where they do annual engagement surveys as well. Year after year, their ENPS was heavily negative, and it really hurt him because he cares about his people a lot, actually. And he just didn't understand why it was so bad. When they started with us, they were at negative 13 ENPS. They went to plus 84 ENPS within the span of a year and a little bit.
That's almost unheard of. I mean, it's unbelievable.
And he's been there for a long time. When he first started using Happily, he started hearing honestly very, very basic things that he was shocked to hear. It's like, hey, why didn't you tell me about this before? Things as mundane as, the AC wasn't reaching me, and, things that are just so trivial, but especially in certain cultures where psychological safety is low, or there is this, hierarchy in place where you feel like you don't have the right to be
Right.
sharing that sort of feedback. Now he started hearing all these little things that he was like, I can fix that in a minute, in a day. And just from being able to hear people's kind of concerns and challenges and responding in the right way, that made a huge difference. But actually just met with him a couple months ago, and he shared another example where he heard feedback from, I think it was 3 levels down, that he wasn't a very clear communicator. And he mentioned that that's something he prides himself on. And it hurt him, but rather than reacting in a negative way, he said, hey, this is a good learning opportunity. He reached out, he tried to understand more around why this person shared the specific feedback. He actually learned a lot from it and was able to kind of both rectify or solve that specific challenge with that individual, but more broadly change how he communicates to certain teams and kind of certain levels. And that's really a mindset of a leader who really embraces this in the right way and can get that plus 97 point ENPS turnaround.
Yeah. And, my observation is that when we help these organization transformations, cultural organizations, we have very well-intended executives and others that get together that lay out action plans, but oftentimes the action plans are very broad, big, important, but they're big actions that don't hit the front line very quickly. And really, if you're a barista in a coffee shop, it's not that big strategic thing out here at corporate that's going to make a difference to your life. Is the milk close enough for you to make that latte fast enough?
Yeah.
Is the fridge working?
Exactly.
So much of the driving this increase in employee net promoter score is that you care enough about you're a curator of my time. Now, you may be having those big strategic conversations in the boardroom, but that doesn't trickle down to me often very quickly. You guys get to the front line right away. If I'm a team member, right, I would have the platform on my phone, right? And on a daily basis, I might get predetermined 2 or 3 questions about how things are going, right?
Right.
And it would not take me very long, right? Like maybe just a couple minutes to just quickly respond, right? That data then goes where?
It goes to the manager first, so that the manager has a chance to understand how his team is doing and have a chance to respond back. But the leadership chain gets visibility in terms of, aggregated visibility in terms of how each team is doing.
Yeah, and then I think the way your AI works, when you allow for some verbatim response on there, which it puts in aggregates together, sort of the sentiment data. So now, rather than some HR person putting together all this verbatim stuff together, it immediately forms a trend or an insight for a manager to take action on, and then leaders above that see it. So it's a very open and transparent way. People can start to see that how interconnected we are in breaking down silos and so forth. So it's just, and what I love about it, Taarif, is that it's so bread and butter, and yet it's so digital and advanced at the same time. So, what's your take around, going back to your client, that this 80 employee net promoter score, how has that impacted the business?
Yeah, that specific business unit, has been called on by the leadership as the larger organization is going through like a major digital transformation project. And they picked that business unit as what they know to be a great high-performing business unit to pilot this with and showcase others. So there's internal recognition that, hey, this is a really good team that's very responsive, that will be great ambassador to help influence others in the organization. So really, really happy for them. Credit where credit is due. The leader embraced it very well, and they're now getting opportunities to expand the impact that they have.
I want to explore this because I feel pretty strongly about the idea that of rethinking the approach around technology. Oftentimes, we introduce new technology, new platforms as technological as IT projects.
Right.
And they're really, really, when you step back and look at them, they're really people initiatives. They're really cultural initiatives. Right. And when you take that approach as a different mindset than when you're going, hey, we're going to talk about specifications and making sure things you got to do that. But that shouldn't be the leading way that you go into. So you guys do a lot to help people understand what's going to be different because of this. Talk about what you're experiencing when you take people through some sort of, let's talk about how this platform is going to change the way you work. What are some of the things you notice when you do that?
Yeah, firstly, to your point, you're right. Like most transformation projects fail when you only focus on the technology or the IT. You really need to focus on the people. And I think that's where most people get it wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
The other thing you touched on that is a big part of what we do at Happily is really helping organizations actually have their teams live out their values, rather than just things on wall. What is your mission? How do your values help you achieve that mission? And then how do you integrate those, everyday behaviors and actions to be aligned with that? So whether you're going through a transformation, digital technology transformation or business transformation, the nudges, the questions that we ask every day, the recognition that you give and what value you tag to it, all those things come into play to drive the everyday behaviors you really need for the team to succeed. And I think
I'm sorry I jumped in there because a lot of people believe that having values these days is, too pedestrian, too past. But people with modern values, how vital they are, right? You tie them right into the behavior of the people that are doing the work. So you reinforce the importance of being consistent and defining.
Yeah, I think there's sometimes, people have very generic values, right? Like integrity and respect and like things
Right.
are table stake. But actually, Lauren, I think I heard you talk about the Amazon value and practice, right? Like for Amazon, it was customer support, customer service was critical. And when they had a practice like the empty chair in the room to represent the customer, those things are really critical for actually getting people to always remember the customer and always make sure that the decisions they're making in everyday meetings reflect that. So that's where I think if you have the right values that will help you achieve the mission, it's not an afterthought. It has to be integrated into like every decision that you make.
Right. How optimistic are you that we can continue to drive people first into the middle of the mix?
I'm a naturally very optimistic person where my twin brother will balance me out in the other direction. So I think we complement each other well. But I'll say I don't think it's an easy road to get there. I feel that we are too quick to use AI and technology to correct people challenges that we often brush aside people growth and developments for AI advancements. I think fresh grads are having a harder time as well finding a job in this market because an AI can often do as good of a job as a kind of a fresh grad. So it's as though I'm a normally optimistic person, I will say we have our challenges cut out ahead of us to make organizations and leaders continue to be people-centric.
Well, here's what we know, right? So whether you're in Mountain View or you're in Bangkok or anywhere in the world, human beings that thrive and can meaningfully contribute create more value. And the data is overwhelmingly there. But I think what you pointed out, and it's just harder. It's harder work. And it's hard work to go and take that digital platform in that you guys have and to have to listen daily and to be committed to those daily improvements. It's just harder work. And but it's the source of true happiness. So, don't lose your optimism. Because
meeting and getting to interact with leaders like you give me a lot more optimism, Lauren.
Hey, well, I tell you what, we're going into this. I think every day we need to continue to raise the idea that we can make better workplaces, and next gen leaders need to be the and leaders. They need to be able to do both. They may be able to get great results and great thriving places for people to work, which doesn't mean that we don't have to do layoffs and all those kind of things. It's just the way about how we do it is just very different. What's the if you were the audience out there, if you were to give a message to our audience, what would you say to them?
I think the parting thought, credit to my brother. This is one of his impetus for founding Happily was the discovery that one of the most important factors for creating high-performing teams is when you have strong relationships in the workplace. So for all the leaders out there, remember that the relationships that you have. When you have strong relationships, everything else takes care of itself. People will feel more comfortable sharing ideas, sharing feedback, sharing concerns. People will be more loyal. People will work harder because they care about the work that they do and the impact that it's having on the relationships that they care about. So while there's so many other factors to think about, if there's one most important central thing to think about, it's really around how do you create stronger, more meaningful relationships in work, or, I think that applies to in life as well.
I want to explore something further before we wrap up around this. So I'm so curious because I don't think I've talked to you about this. When I retired from corporate life and I started teaching at my class at Harvard and the U of A, I start every session. What I do is I bring people together and I put them in a circle and I introduce the principle of connect before contact. And I often ask a question like, tell me about the hardest decision you've ever had to make in your life, professionally or personally, and what you've learned about it. It's unbelievable what happens. I guess I'm just sometimes just so stunned at this simple approach and how important it is. And yet when I hear you talking about, if you had one thing, it's about relationships, maybe that reinforces that. Anyway, what's your take on that? Why do you think that lands so well?
First, I really love that exercise, Lauren. Thank you so much for sharing. I think that's so meaningful and impactful, and I think through that, you're probably changing the lives of hundreds of thousands or millions of people by giving them new form relationships, but also maybe even an understanding of themselves. And I think you're right that it's not really about time spent. It's really about meaningful understanding and listening. I've also done exercises where you hear somebody talk and you're not allowed to speak at all. You have to listen for 3 or 5 minutes, and it's actually hard for a lot of people, right? But if you build that muscle, you really pay attention and listen, then you're able to have a far richer dialogue, and the other person will also know that, hey, actually you genuinely care enough to listen and to talk to me about it. I think that's such a great skill and experience that you're getting more and more people to build.
Yeah, at Happily and all the research you've done, and I know that you and Reef, I know you're very data driven. I mean, this is not stuff that you make up out of the air. I mean, you guys are really, really research driven around your work and your insights. But really, relationships and connection come from understanding and appreciation. And you guys on your platform do that. You have that on steroids, digital steroids, and yet it's enormously human. And I'm so grateful that I've had a chance to run into you guys, and the world needs more of you. And I know the leaders that are listening to this, together, by investing in that, we will build high performing and very thriving workplaces. We will keep that fire burning. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you joining us. Yeah. But any kind of wrap up, kind of closing messages to their audience?
I think just a thank you to you, Lorne, and really appreciate your support, your advocacy. Again, everything that you've been preaching about for decades, I wish more and more people listen to as well, because the more that I read, the more we're just very both value aligned and I think ideologically aligned. We've learned a lot from the things that you share. Thank you for your support, and thanks for having me today.
Well, you know what? It makes me so happy to see the torch being passed on from the analog way that I've worked in the past to the way you guys are making it truly part of a more modern workplace. And so you guys are going to take it to a whole nother level. And thank goodness for that. Pass my best regards on to Reef and to the rest of the team out there. Thank you, Tim, for being part of this and just adding to the conversation with all of our listeners and followers. Appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Lorne Rubis, the founder of Belongify Connect, and I want to let you in on a kind of something that's been a secret for me, in the best sense of the word, that I just want to share with as many people as I can. Well, I start every one of my sessions off with Belongify Connect. And in 60 to 90 minutes, these people that don't know each other at all are now finding each other, to bridges to connect with each other. They learn so much faster. And so whatever you're doing, if you have a team, a new team, an incumbent team, doesn't matter what position, whether you're the CEO, if you're a first line supervisor, take your team through Belongify Connect. 60 to 90 minutes, and I promise you, I've done this thousands of times. It'll make such a difference. It's not a magic wand, but I'll tell you, it's a result creator. And that's what you're trying to do, connect people for greater results.
The full Belongify Connect experience is available for you now. Just a couple clicks away and 60 to 90 minutes of your time to transform your team's trust and performance. Get it at belongify.com.